Okay, are we live? Okay. So I put them. So I'm basically gonna paint and discuss King Tut right now. And I don't know how people know like why exactly we know who King Tut was, but it's kind of tragic. We're gonna go ahead and go over the reason why we know who King Tut is. Now, King Tut was a pharaoh in Egypt, and he lived in a very interesting time. The issues really started with his parents. I never remember his first name. Let me check that. I don't want to say anything wrong. And his full name was King Tutankhamun, but we call him King Tut for short. Let's see. Now, he was actually the last of his dynasty to survive. He was the last person of. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Here it goes. Okay. So King Tut. Now, his father was named Akhenaten. And there is thought to be Nefertiti, who I'm sure you know who Nefertiti is too. So, like I said, the problem starts with his father. His father was a very strange man. Like I will say, he was very strange. He had his own way of looking at things, and not decided to. Let me see. Maybe I string back up. Where is it? I'm knocking. To change the entire country's religion and move everyone out into the desert. So he basically declared that there was only one God, and he was the son of that God. And if you've ever known anything about Egypt, Egypt has a lot of gods. There's not just one God. So Akhenaten moved everyone out in the middle of Egypt and started worship of a new god who he was the high priest of. So basically said, worship me and not the other gods and not the other guys. None of the pharaohs had any sort of say in the matter, right? Of Egypt, where he lived for a little while. And there's the main capital, I believe, at that time was Cairo. I'm not 100% on that, but I believe it was Cairo. It has been Cairo for like ever because it's on the Nelta dial. So they basically, you want to be around water in a desert. So it's been around there for a while, so that's why Akhenaten was so insane. And if you see a picture of him, I'm sure you'll see who he is. That's same with Cleopatra, because basically they both are very recognizable. Akhenaten is, if you've ever seen a picture of him, he's the pharaoh who looks like a pregnant person. And a bunch of ancient alien theologists, those crazy people, they all say that he was just weirdly shaped. And it's possible that he had like a medical condition. I think it was possibly because he just saw himself as different and he wanted to protect some. That the reason he looked like he was pregnant is he wanted to be the source of all life. So if women have children, so he wanted to like take some of that power for himself. So he portrayed himself as if he was pregnant. Now I don't know if that's true. He could have had a medical condition. It could be that he wanted to portray himself that way to pretend like he had more power than he did. So Akhenaten died. King Tut's father died. And, people were not in the middle of the desert not there volunteer. So what happens when Akhenaten dies? Everyone drops the new religion like a hotcake. and goes back to the old one. So, King Tut was left with his mother, and they all moved back to Cairo. Like I said, I believe it's Cairo. Double check if you're going to do anything on this, but it's basically like they moved all back to Cairo, went back to Cairo, turned back to the old gods. And what is poor King Tut to do? So I believe he actually had a different name before his father died, and after his father died, he had the name King Tut. King Tut, and the reason is because a lot of like pharaohs and stuff, they typically Moses, that's actually like an Egyptian name. Like it's true now, but back in the day, anything else was like Egyptian. So you get a lot of Ramses, like Moses. It says SES. Ramses. So it's like Ramses, Ra. These are here, and then you have like Moses. So this ending here is very common, and it's also very. I think that means king. I'm not totally 100% on that, but basically, a lot of Egyptian names are broken up like this. So Moses is really like it has Ramses does, and Ra. Ra is the sun god. So Ra is the sun god there, and then this. I don't remember what this means, but remember it's the same as in Moses. So there's a little bit of, hieroglyphics. Not really hieroglyphics, but like basic ancient Egyptian, which I don't even know why I know that. I think it was, I don't even know why I know that, but I know that. I watched too much History Channel back when it was actually history, so that's probably partially why. Okay. So back to King Tut. So King Tut changed his name, agreed to go back to the old gods. And he I think he was getting ready to marry either his cousin or his sister. All the dynasties back in the day, they always married their like brothers or sisters or whatever. So he was going to marry his sister and father, return to the old ways back in Egypt. And suddenly he died. Like it was very sudden. He died quickly. Like it wasn't a slow thing. He was under a regent and he had just inherited his throne, and he died like almost immediately. And there's some speculation that maybe he was like not okay with going back to the old ways, and he wanted to go back, and so somebody stabbed him. But I mean a special on it, and they say that they have his body, of course. So they have his body, and they say the more likely reason is that basically he was in a chariot race, right? So King Tut was in a chariot race. Has things to do, like pharaohs of ancient Egypt, very masculine. They had to, like, if there was a war, they were not on the sidelines. They were in the blood and guts. So they had to be good at chariots and stuff and had to demonstrate their prowess all the time. So it was not uncommon to be doing a lot of physical labor like that, and it was considered manly and proving their divinity and all this other stuff. So of course there was a tragedy and he died doing it. So what do? He had just moved from other place. So father had been trying to reorganize all of Egypt, and they did not have a tomb for him, right? And tombs take forever to build, right? It takes some of them 40 years or more. They're built, their main, like pre-op with Moro, who was the last of his line, who had just come back, who had just returned to Egypt from another area of Egypt and did not have any sort of burial questions whatsoever. Like I think they actually had started one slightly, but they had like a place where they were planning to build it. But for the most part, there was never Tutankhamun. And they had to rush. Right? They had like this planning on building. It had like his name on it, right? Had like Tutankhamun's name on it, but they had not anything in it. So what they did is they tomb, like it wasn't as good as a pharaoh's tomb, but it was at least the closest they could get because they had like a time limit to do this stuff. It was the closest they could get at the time, and so they took this tomb and they just restructured Pharaoh's tomb. They kind of just drew it. And here's a like the picture I'm drawing now of King Tut, and let me get drawing this like this. So you see this picture right here? You see King Tut here? Right? I'm trying to even out this chin here. See King Tut? See how he has earrings? Common for Egyptian pharaohs. That was only common for women. So a very leading theory in this is that actually this is not originally supposed to be for. This was actually Probabler's mask. And what they did is they retrofitted some pieces on it. So it was mostly his mother, but then they changed some of the features and stuff. So we have this ready. So this was very quickly made for him using what they had at the time, which is other grave robbers had a hard time finding King Tut's tomb, right? So King Tut, they thought they found his tomb, and they did the tomb that they thought was King Pharaoh's, right? They thought it was Tutankhamun's, but it was the one that they were planning to build, and not the one that. This is a bit hard right here, like this is a bit. So they looted the one that they thought was King Tut's, and not the actual tomb. And that's why we know who King Tut was, because like I said, this guy lived for a hot minute. He was not alive. He was barely king. Like he was king for like a hot minute. He was not king for long. Like Ramses, I think, was actually king for Ramses the Great. There were actually Ramses. Ramses the Great probably lived for 70 years. He lived a long time as pharaoh, like a ridiculously long time as pharaoh. And the reason being, of course, like, so even though he didn't live long and he wasn't actually a pharaoh for any amount of time, he still had some impact because, like, he helped move Egypt back to the place that his father had abandoned, right? Him as regent. And the reason we really know him, though, is because of his tomb, which is the most Egyptian tomb. And the saddest part is, if you think about it, his tomb was probably one of the most, it was built in like a couple of days. It was probably like a pauper's tomb almost. This was not like a tomb that problems with getting this jawline because I got this beard. But quick fact, like there actually are some Egyptian queens who would wear this bit right here. It's supposed to be like masculine. So there are some they aren't called queens, they're called pharaohs. They're female pharaohs because there's not really a word like ruler. It's not a segregated role. So it's always queen. It's not queen. It's a pharaoh, but it's female. But most notable one, I've got this all over it, but I'm going to paint over it anyway. And the reason I am doing this one is because I have this gold paint. I want to use it, and King Tut is like the perfect reason to use it. And I love the story, so we're going to go ahead and paint that, put it on my wall, and have a look at this gold part. I'll have to check it over a little bit because drawing these things on stream, I have to use a weird angle here. I can't just, let's see if I can get a little bit of a better angle for me, because sure, it's okay for you to see, but for me to see, I don't see it as well as I do normally. Let's see if I can get it. It's not a better angle. Okay, I'm trying, because this is supposed to be as symmetrical as possible, and I don't think I've got it completely symmetrical. So we're going to try to fix that a little bit, make it as symmetrical as possible. Yeah, I don't think those eyes are perfect. back and fix the eyes. And of course, all Egyptian pharaohs are supposed to be like really gods. Like, most notable one I think is Horus. And if you know, there's actually two different animals on the what do you call this? The crown. I wouldn't call it the crown. I'm not sure what you call this, but there are two different animals for it, and it's a cobra and a buzzard, or is it a vulture? Might be a vulture. So the reason that there are two animals here is because one represents Upper Egypt and one represents Lower Egypt. And Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt at one point were different countries, and at some point they were merged, right? So they use this. There's also another one here. There's a I'm sure you've seen this crown. So there's another one, and it's like got this, and then it's got the symbols on it, and then the king wears it like this, right? So this is actually two parts too. It's typically got these two symbols on top of it, and the crown for I was either for one of the Egypt was this, and the crown for the other Egypt was this. So when they merged, they became this crown here. You see that? So there's a lot of symbology like that where it's a combining of Egypt together, but they weren't always together. And I'm sure there was some sort of nasty battle, but this guy lived. I think I did a little bit of research on his mother yesterday, and I think if I remember correctly, he lived probably 3,000 years ago. Like, this was not somebody who died yesterday. This guy has been dead for a long time, but we still talk about him. It's honestly, it's kind of bad luck, because I guess possibly we might still talk about him because like his Nefertiti was like a king regent, so she's like one of the only females who were pharaoh. That wasn't a long list, and his father was like out there, man. He was out there. I don't know, like, did he have good reasons for like leaving, a place with water and going out in the middle of the desert, or was he just crazy, or like did people misrepresent him? Who knows? But it has led to this very weird situation. I think they've actually found Akhenaten's body, if I remember correctly. They found his mummy. He was very worse than his son, if I'm honest, because like he was not well liked, and he probably had like a better tomb because, like I said, his was probably not rushed. So his ear is bothering me. I don't think it's far enough out, so we're gonna move that a bit. That's looking decent though from my angle. It's hard for me. Like when I look up, I don't like it because I'm looking at it from a different angle than you are. I look up and I'm like, oh, that's a different angle, and I don't like it. So I'm trying to make sure I like it from both angles. I like what you see, and I like what I see. Let me turn it upside down. Good method to make sure you like your art is turn it upside down, because that way it helps you different angle, and you can see. Oh, like here I'm seeing like what's not missing, and like I said, I have to make this as even as it can be because that's kind of the point of it. And of course, I did not think that this pencilette. This isn't even pencilette. I have no idea why this is all over the place, but it is. Okay. I got his collar done. But yeah, his mother was pretty famous too. And his father was like, he was either a genius or crazy. And I can't tell you because he was 3,000 years dead before I even was born. So now this I'm going to paint. It's just going to be mostly gold. I want it to be like gold. Bright colors, you know. Just something really pretty to. But this project, like I said, is basically I don't have a lot of art from my childhood, basically things, and just painting it on the weekends to like make sure I remember grow up, or you know, older, because I'm terrified of losing my memory when I get older, because my parents had you know, my grandparents had what is it? And now my grandparents had Alzheimer's, right? I don't want to forget anything, so making paintings now, basically things I love, and you know, that way I'll always have them with me, even if I forget anything. So I'm hoping they'll actually help you remember things, because that seems like that would be a good idea. But well, this paint's pretty good. Like I was worried, old paint's really hard to get a good quality paint. There's some queens I want to talk about eventually. But you know, that's gonna be a whole thing, so I don't want to talk about them before I get to them. Probably talk about paint, but I'm enjoying painting right now. It's hard to get, like when I was in art school, I had this art teacher who just loved painter's tape. Loved it. And I hated painter's tape. And I don't know if I've told anyone on this live stream yet. I like acrylic paint. I like acrylic paint a lot. And so acrylic paint is both good and bad. I have days where I love it and days where I hate it. And I'll probably have to go do 2 coats of this one. Everything I want gold. But some days I hate it and some I like it. But the good thing about it is it dries quickly, so it works real well for me when I'm in a hurry and I just want to paint something out quick and have a little bit of a, you know, talking to myself moment. Literally nothing better than acrylic to paint, to just sit there and paint, not worry about it. Now, if I want to take my time, no, do not use acrylic. It is a bad idea. But, you know, for the most part, it works great. Oh, I'll cover most of this detail too. That's a shame. Oh well. Because this is going to be more like an outline, cartoony thing. Because I want it to be incredibly dramatic when you look at it. Like you'll see it and it'll just be gold. Blasted gold in the room. Because that's what the pharaohs liked. They were very much into the bling. Nefertiti was his mother, and Nefertiti was I just wonder, like, oh, and also you know that Egyptians married their Egyptian pharaohs. They married their sister. It was just a done deal. Like they married their sister. They might have concubines or whatever, but they married their sister. They could keep it all in the bloodline. In fact, Cleopatra was married to his brother, and I believe actually had him killed at some point, or he mysteriously died because Cleopatra was the last of a line called. I believe this may have been a line before her, probably 2 lines before her. There have been a lot of lines of Egypt, but the Cleopatra line was. It was not. It was a colonization of Egypt by the Greeks. And if you go look at the tombs of that time, the cultures very thoroughly. And basically, Alexander, I believe was it Alexander the Great? Yeah, I believe it was Alexander the Great. Basically conquered most of the Mediterranean and Egypt, right? And he put a regent in charge of Egypt. And that Cleopatra's ancestor, I'm not sure how many greats, but it was probably at least her grandfather, probably further back than that. And Cleopatra's ancestors didn't leave Egypt. They just stayed and they became pharaohs. And they adopted the culture and everything. But yeah, so Cleopatra married her brother. And basically Cleopatra wanted to make peace with the Romans, right? To make part of their empire. And her brother and sister did not like that. So they kind of banished Cleopatra. And Cleopatra, of course, being the very smart woman that she was, smuggled herself in a rug into, what was it, Caesar's, bedchambers, right? It wasn't his bedchambers. It was basically his, that's kind of a rumor. It wasn't his bedchambers. It was basically like her brother and sister were seeing Caesar next, and she get in on an alliance with Caesar before they could go around and, get him on their side first. So she snuggled herself in a rug to see Caesar while her brother and sister were trying to make a deal with Caesar. And Caesar sided with Cleopatra. And people have said, oh, she was beautiful. Cleopatra was more smart than she was beautiful. I'm not saying she was ugly. But if you ever seen a picture of Cleopatra, that's probably not what. And there's some debate a little bit about exactly what Cleopatra looked like, because Cleopatra, like most pharaohs, would alter her image to suit her needs. It was just the thing they did in Egyptian culture. And like I said, although Cleopatra was technically a remnant of a colonization of Egypt by Greece, they still very much, and that was a part of Greek culture too. If they conquered a place, they accepted the culture of the place they were conquering. They might mix culture in it, I'm sure after Cleopatra ancestor took over Egypt, I'm sure that there were Zeus temples next to Osiris temples, next to Horus temples, next to Aphrodite's temples. So they basically were very free religion thing. So you could worship whoever you liked. And so, again, that's why the temples at that time, funeral places at that time were just wild, because they were very much, that light is just horrible, isn't it? Morse. Okay. So, but Cleopatra made her peace with, Caesar. And Caesar, of course, sided with Cleopatra. And I'm pretty sure that the age difference between Cleopatra and her siblings was extreme. It was very long. 10 is the least I want to say. I want to say it was probably 12 or 15 years. So Cleopatra was probably 25, and her brother was probably 3. So imagine that you have a 2-year-old brother born. Your parents basically tell you that you're going to marry this 2-year-old when you grow up. That's basically what Cleopatra was told when she was when her brother was born. You're going to marry this guy. He was 2 or 3. That happened all over the place. That wasn't just Egypt. It was also, and back to Cleopatra. Cleopatra got Caesar on her side. And basically, Egypt was kind of in a civil war at the time. So Cleopatra and her brothers were in a civil war, and people took different sides. And, after Rome took a side, it was kind of all over. So, I believe there was the Lighthouse of Alexandria, which is one of the ancient wonders of the ancient world, and there's like they actually have like world wonders nowadays, and they'll talk about them sometimes. And those are actually they were ancient ones back. And there was one of them was Alexandria's lighthouse, and it was in Alexandria. I believe that's like where Cleopatra from, because I believe they had moved on to Cairo at that point, and they were in Alexandria, or maybe it was Alexandria they were in. I don't remember, but my geography is my history, so probably even not that great. So, yeah, pretty pleased with that. Let's see. But Cleopatra made her peace with Caesar, and they may or may not have done it. I don't know. Who knows? I believe she was probably younger than Caesar by quite a good mark, because he died quite shortly afterwards. Caesar died kind of because he was betrayed. I don't know if you've ever heard this word, but it's a to brute. So Cleopatra was in lurch because her ally in Rome was dead now, like the one she had lost everything for. And I believe they had already run a civil war, so she had Egypt at the very least. And I don't know if people don't know this, but I did have a son. I believe he was. It's hard to tell because she lived a long time ago. She lived in 50 BC, so she lived nearly 2,000 years ago. It's hard to tell. It's been so long. So, but I believe it was Mark Antony. Yeah, I thought that was what his name is. So her son was actually probably the son of Mark Antony, which is the next Roman person who she made, an alliance with. And the problem was there was problems in Egypt at the time. In Rome at the time, and there was kind of a battle for power. And Antony had survived 2 changes of Egypt and had lived through them, but she couldn't survive one. And there is some stories that she probably poisoned herself. And I've heard a rumor, I don't know if this one's true, but it is said that Cleopatra may have tried poison that she was going to use on herself on slaves. So she'd have slaves try out the poison and then watch them die to decide. So this was not very cruel. I didn't even get to what she did to her sister. So her sister, she made a bargain with Caesar. And, this is way before Rome was Christian, actually killing Christians at this point. So, Cleopatra had gotten Caesar on her side, and she had a brother and sister. I'm pretty sure her brother was killed. I can't 100% say that, but I'm pretty sure her brother was killed. But her sister was actually sent to the gladiator games, right? Cleopatra's sister was sent to the gladiator games. And the way the gladiators works is they send people to be there killed for nothing. So Cleopatra's sister was put in a cage on the gladiator, and people voted on whether she would fight in the gladiator games or not. And the saying is basically that the crowd was not pleased about a 4 or 5-year-old being put in the gladiator games, so they actually voted to save her. So she wasn't killed in the gladiator games. Instead, she went to live in a monastery kind of thing where she forever celibate and have no children, but live there for the rest of her life. But that was the agreement under Caesar. Caesar was one who was protecting her. And what happened when Caesar died is basically that protection was gone. It was gone. So very shortly after Caesar died, Cleopatra's sister also died. And pretty sure that Cleopatra had it done. Like people are 95% sure that Cleopatra had an assassin go to the monastery that her sister was in and killed her. So if you think like Cleopatra, oh, she's a great Cleopatra, you would not want to be around Cleopatra. I don't want to be around Cleopatra. Cleopatra was not somebody I would have found. She was smart though, and a lot of people who talk about her sit there and talk about her like, oh, Cleopatra was, you know, used sex for like stuff. She did not. Cleopatra knew 7 languages. She knew 7 languages. 7! She was an incredibly smart person. She was incredibly ruthless. Like, there is no doubting that. But she was one smart woman. And the reason we all think that Cleopatra was like is mostly because everything Cleopatra was not written when Cleopatra was alive. It was written like hundreds of years or thousands of years Cleopatra had died. And it was written by men who did not really want to acknowledge that there could be a great politician or who was female. So they kind of just painted her as, oh, she was just, the way some people do nowadays. Oh, she has used her wiles to get what she wanted. But Cleopatra was smart. She was incredibly smart. She was ruthless too. Like, you do not want to turn your back on her, but she was smart. And I mean, really sad, but I'm sure she would have done worse to other people if given the chance, though. So glass half full, I guess. And I believe like blue is considered very royal in Egypt. I think it was considered like part of the afterlife. It helps you somehow. So that's why there's a lot of gold here. And I believe, was it Egyptians or was it Mayans? I want to say it was Mayan. It was Egyptians. I believe Egyptians thought that gold was like the flesh of the gods, which is why they liked it. Gold here. Actually, Chinese people buried their emperors in jade. Just it was they'd make battle suits of jade and put them in there. But I don't think that although there are Chinese mummies, their preservation methods probably weren't as good as Egyptians were. Nobody embalmed. Oh, there is the one mummy in China that's pretty well preserved. I think there's like a mummy in China who's super well preserved. She's probably one of the most well preserved. I forget her name, but the kings buried in jade did not survive very well because they didn't really do anything else. They put them in jade. They thought that would protect them, but didn't. But yeah, and Egyptians had like a lot going for them. They actually, they lived in basically a desert. Like, I mean, what preserves better than desert? So they had a lot going for them. Although they're all the bog mummies. Okay, let's go back to King Tut, I guess. King Tut was buried, right? He was buried very hastily. And I don't know how you know this, but like, I probably didn't know this, but towards the beginning of the 21st century, they push to get Egypt and put them in the and it's kind of horrible because I mean it was the Egyptian people, French and British people quickly just started like grabbing stuff and taking it back to their countries. So that's why there's a lot of like Egyptians in the British Museum. It's because basically at the beginning of the 21st century, there were a lot of French, like British people battling over Egyptian stuff. And where did I put my black? I don't see my black. It's here somewhere. I have some black on the palette, but it's getting so dry. Make it work. Okay. So basically, all of the, well-to-do Indiana Jones types of the like early century would steal stuff from Egypt and just put it in the library of the place they were. There were also some good things, like one of the things that happened was the Rosetta Stone was found, which was like no one knew how to read Egyptian at the time because it was literally, like I said, the the closest to us monarch is Cleopatra, like who was even kind of considered Egyptian. She was partially, she was they absorbed the culture pretty well, but she was a descendant of a region of Egypt, so she wasn't a full, but they still spoke and wrote ancient Egyptian back then. Like they could still write hieroglyphics. So they found a stone called the Rosetta Stone, and that's what the software is named after, the Rosetta Stone. And this Rosetta Stone was written in ancient hieroglyphics, Greek. I think it was Greek. I know it was in Latin for sure. So you had basically this thing that you could kind of sit there and figure out. And it took them forever because, like, hieroglyphics are not easy to read, even if you know what they say, but trying to, like, figure out what they are after the fact was just, I mean, I can't even imagine how much effort that takes. Okay, I'm really going to need my black. I'm sitting on it. That's not good. Okay. So they basically got the reason we understand hieroglyphs. I mean, I guess that's something that good at it. But that's why now, like, Egypt has a lot of rules around, like, digs and stuff like that. The people who actually went and got King Tut's tomb, you'd get, like, a license, right? And then you go look for King Tut's tomb. But they didn't know what they were looking for, really. They were just in the, I believe it's called the Valley of Kings, is where all the pharaohs are. And you would permit to dig in a certain area. And like I said, the reason that King Tut's tombs was so well was partially because it thought that it had already been found, because there was a second one. And it was pretty much empty. There was always still hope, because I mean, like, Pharaoh lived for thousands of years, and there, it's always possible that maybe there's like a small one you didn't know about, that got hidden somehow. So they were always digging in the desert, and they found King Tut's tomb. And it was the biggest to-do you've ever seen. Like, everyone was out there looking at the King Tut's tomb. And pretty much, some of them were stealing stuff. I don't want to say that, but they were. Some of them were stealing stuff for sure. Little small things probably, but not, big things. But a little trinket here or there, because they basically, like, a coin maybe. Because they had spent all their money to do this, but then they weren't allowed to touch it. So, capitalism being what it is, they kind of saw that, they discovered it, they deserved it, so they grabbed a couple of things. Again, probably nothing big, but I was looking okay. On an upper angle. It's so hard to draw this. I thought the gold would make it easier, but no. That was a bad choice. That was an oopsie on me. Yep, this is not going to be easy to paint. I was like, oh, it'll be so easy. Famous last words. Lots of famous last words. It's always, oh, it'll be so easy. And then, 20 hours later. There we go. There we go. want this to be extremely, and I could do, this is almost one of those things that I could probably do in a Cricut better, where I just basically line it up in Illustrator, just basically go from there. Where's really the fun in that? Let's see here. It's got a little bit, probably a bit of a thing there I want to add. Yeah, I like that. Well, that's a nice variety. And again, it's a story like poor Tutankhamun, man. Oh my god. Of all the pharaohs, he probably had the worst. And did I say anything about the curse? Like, there's a legend that King Tut's tomb was cursed, so whoever it would be cursed for all eternity. And the reason there's that rumor, I believe, they didn't die fast. It was pretty slow, but like malaria here, cancer here, stuff like that. So it's probably just coincidence, and the fact that they were in a foreign country they weren't used to, so they probably weren't exactly running at 100%. So that's probably what happened. I doubt it was a curse, but it's still thought of. Maybe they died of a curse. No, they died of what do you say? Just health issues back then. Like, if you're in the wrong century, you could die of a cut, like just a paper cut, dead. So. My line work needs to get better. I might do some exercise with that later. Yeah. There we go. It's looking good. What are we at? 10 o'clock? Jesus Christ. Okay. Yeah. There we go. Oh, it's looking sniffy, huh? Okay, so Queens of Egypt, I guess we could talk about those. Hatshepsut was one. Probably my favorite one. Very strong queen. Or like Pharaoh's. She that probably wouldn't have liked that because she wore a beard. She was one of the main ones who wore a beard, known for wearing a beard. And the reason is that was a symbol of Pharaoh. But it was also a symbol of manhood. So in order for people to stop calling her, like, you're not really Pharaoh, she started wearing a beard. And, she was basically cross-dressing, like thousands of years before present day. And the way she became Pharaoh was basically her husband died. People died. It wasn't that uncommon back then. It was just like, well, my husband's dead. Yeah. So her child was too young for her to take the throne, so she took regent, and she just kind of never released it. So that's how she became Pharaoh. Is she had her husband die, and she just basically took the throne because of it. This is gonna be hard. Let's see if I can get this super detailed line. I might need to get in the brush. And where did my towel go? I just got my towel, and now it's gone. Okay. Here, so we're gonna add a bit of gold here. Yeah. Now I want to go back and do the eyebrows a little better here. There we go. Another blue eyebrows. There we go. Blue eyebrows. Now, men wore eyeliner back then because, you know, the way, basically this is like the eye of Horus, which basically made them see further. This is basically what a hawk eye looks like, and they're kind of supposed to like relationships to hawks. Like, who wouldn't want to have, you know, eagle eyes? I would. So why they look like this? It's basically to give them the power of hawks. That was pretty good. It's intended ways to be more representational. It's turning out more 3D. So I'm trying to decide do I want to get rid of this, or do I want to keep them and just enhance them some more? I don't know. We're going to go back and go over some of the gold real quick and think about it. Because it's a little bit watery. I'll have to go over it a second time. But later on, I'll turn this into a TikTok, so I'm just basically gonna, you know what? We're figure it out in a bit. Painful. Yeah, it looks good. We like that. Okay. We're just gonna go for less representational and more iconic. There we go. I like that. Probably add some lines there to give it some depth somehow. I'll even out these brush strokes, otherwise it'll look chunky, and my purpose with this is not to be chunky. Like, I use cheap paints, but I don't want the cheap, you know. Yeah, there we go. Paint was like $7. So for me, that's expensive, but that's not expensive. So I'm actually surprised it even looks somewhat gold. Okay. What time is it now? It's 10 o'clock. Hoping to have this done like in another 30 minutes probably. So that'll probably be about my limit for this. Doing the ears. And yeah, I'm going to make it much more representational and less lifelike. We're going to go, but that's what we want. Don't know how to do the nose. The nose is going to be difficult. We'll figure it out in there. I have to do another layer after that. Then right here is good. We're of course going to paint. We're going to go ahead and just paint the entire thing here, and then we'll come back in with the details. That's going to take a while for me to paint that. So we're going to paint it gold as a base, and then add details after. That'll be the easiest and least intensive way to do this. It's got some red beads and stuff in here. Like, it's very decorative right here. Right? There we go. And this paint looks a little bit too bronze, actually. You know, as long as it's metallic, I'll be happy, but could have been a little bit golder. $7, and for gold paints are just, they're hard to come by that look good. They'll look pretty good on the wall from afar on other pieces. poor Nefertiti too, because I mean, like, poor Nefertiti lost her son at like. I'm trying to remember the number off the top of my head. I'm horrible at remembering numbers. I think 16. Poor guy. You know, he got what every pharaoh seems to want, though. Every pharaoh wanted immortality, remember forever. And he definitely got that. So, I mean, maybe he'd have been happy about it. Who knows? Yeah, the nose is going to be difficult. We'll have to think about that for a second because I don't know how to do that. We're going to figure it out. I'll come back to it in a second. I'm going to do some other stuff while I'm thinking about it. Just doing a bunch of layers of this gold paint. Trying to make it as thick as possible. And as smooth as possible, which I'm not really as good at that. But so that way it'll be super here, or at least somewhat clean out it being clean. Okay. It's starting to look decent. I'm gonna go back to black for a second and start doing some line work to try to give it some more, whatever I'm doing. I don't know. My brain's starting to get tired. You can tell my brain's starting to get tired. It's just, I can't talk anymore. There, it's kind of like right there. Probably be good. I think I'm gonna leave the blue the way. Okay, and then we're gonna try to do the lips. You can always redo it if it looks crap. So we're gonna try to do it right the first time. Give him some nice lips. Yeah. And give him his nice bottom lip. And then now make him look a little bit 3D, but not too much. You want to add like his little nose here. Maybe some sides. You might want to leave just to make it easier. I'm trying to think, like, this is the part where it always gets kind of hard because I have to just stop. It's just scorpion at the top yet. Which is nice scorpion up at the top. Like another a hint of a vulture. I'm not terribly good at painting those. As long as I'm not great at painting. Okay. That's looking decent, but I think his nose needs one. We're just going to paint here again. Now, outline his little thing here, and then he's got, what is this, beard? This must have a prop, I don't know what. I'm going to give him some outlines here to outline the braids of his beard. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. Think good. Silly's looking slightly better. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to paint the vulture and the snake gold. That's about time for that. Yep. Really blue here. Now we're lucky to live in such a time that paint like this is available for everybody, because it used not. It used to be you could only get paint from certain areas. In fact, lapis lazuli is like what they used to use to make blue, like this color. And actually, lapis lazuli is still one of the like more expensive kinds of blue you can get. It's a basically a semi-precious stone you're crushing, and then the amount of work it takes to find it and crush it and all this other stuff just takes forever. There's a reason some of these paints cost a lot of money. But luckily for me, I live in a time where I don't have to spend, $100 on a paint that's going to run out in a couple of months. Okay. You're going to start adding some detail here. Just the beads. Can you see that? Just the beads here. We're near pretty close. We're hitting just about what I wanted to do. I didn't want to spend much more than an hour on this painting. We haven't. Probably just at an hour and 30 minutes, which is about what it takes me to paint when I'm not, This is just me painting and talking. I meant to do this during pandemic, but I was so depressed. I just couldn't move. So we're gonna do this. I have something to look forward to every week. Because I'm still kind of stranded. Yep. Yeah. I'm liking the red. Oh yeah. Nowhere else. It's just on the collar. I don't know if they have a specific sure what it is, so I'm probably gonna mess it up. I don't think anyone really worships like 3,000-year-old beasts though, so I don't think I think so. Oh yeah, it looks pretty good on that. I like that. Okay. So we're gonna do like another one just like that, but with a different color. God, I would kill for that necklace. Beautiful that is. That is just a gorgeous piece of jewelry. That's just gorgeous. Now, do you know who the most common thieves of the pharaoh's graves were? This is kind of funny, but the most common thieves, they believe, they don't know for sure. Like, again, it was 3,000 years ago. How do we really know anything? They believe it was actually the pharaoh's tomb builders who would steal the most from the graves, because like they knew how to get in and out of them. They knew all the exits and entrances and stuff. And what happens when the next pharaoh refuses to pay your wages? You go rob the last pharaoh's. But they would, like, if the previous pharaoh wouldn't be paying their wages, they would go rob the tombs, because they had money and they weren't getting paid. Who doesn't sympathize with that? So they would say, okay, you're not going to pay me, and they'd go rob their father or whatever. And they did that for literal centuries. Seemed to work out, I guess, for them, because I think this was the only tomb that's ever been discovered intact. I could be wrong about that, but it's been years since I've watched History Channel, because I don't have cable anymore, but I'm pretty sure that this was the last big tomb. And I don't think History Channel's even any good anymore, is it? Like, last I heard, it was still showing Ancient Aliens, so it's probably not great. So like blue here, I think. Yeah. Yep, looks good. We're pleased. Do another red. Okay. Yeah, there's that done. Now then I'm gonna, this might be the last one here. Yeah, last one of blue. Now there's his lovely bling, and we're gonna add a little bit more. We're gonna work a little bit more so it looks really sharp. And then this should be cool as well, huh? Yeah, I'm just basically going to go over anything I think needs more gold. And I mean, who doesn't need more gold? We're going to go ahead and get rid of that, I guess. Just because it doesn't really go with the look, does it? There we go. That's good. Deep gold paint and making it there. I'll have to go everything twice. Yeah. I think that looks pretty good. We're going to put that. I think we're probably done for that. So that one did pretty well. And that was the discussion of why. Okay, well, that's it for this stream. I'm probably going to do either Picasso next or a story about North Korea. Haven't decided yet.